At 11:47 p.m., two children appeared outside David Miller's house. They looked completely normal, until David looked into their eyes. There was no white, no color, no reflection, just black. The children didn't try to break in. They didn't threaten him. They didn't even raise their voices. They simply asked to be let inside. And according to one of the strangest paranormal legends ever told, that's exactly what they wanted. It was almost midnight. David Miller was home alone. No visitors were expected. No family was coming over. And the neighborhood outside was completely quiet. Then came 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, 3 times. David waited. Nothing. Then 3 more knocks. This time, harder. David walked toward the front window. He looked outside and saw 2 children standing on his porch. They appeared to be around 10 or 12 years old. Both wore dark hoodies. Both stood completely still. And both were staring directly at the house. Not at the door, not at the window. At him. David slowly opened the door, only a few inches. "Can I help you?" The older boy looked up. His expression was strangely calm, almost emotionless. Then he spoke. "Can we come inside?" David immediately felt uncomfortable. "Where are your parents?" The boy said nothing. Instead, he pointed toward the street. "We need to use your phone." David hesitated. "There's a phone booth down the street." The younger boy suddenly spoke. "Please, we can't go home without you." David frowned. "What do you mean?" The older boy stepped closer, and that's when David noticed something that made his entire body go cold. Their eyes. They were completely black. Not dark brown, not shadowed. Completely black. No visible whites, no iris, no normal reflection. Just black. David slammed the door. He locked it, then backed away. His heart was pounding. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, a voice came through the door. "Please, let us in." David didn't answer. The older boy spoke again. "You can't drive us home. We're too late." David slowly looked through the window. The boys were still there, but something had changed. They were closer, much closer, almost against the glass. David reached for his phone. He was about to call the police. Then, every light in the house went out. Complete darkness. David froze. He waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. Finally, he approached the window. The porch was empty. The street was empty. The children were gone. David didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he checked his security camera. At 11:47 p.m., the recording showed the 2 boys approaching the house. They walked toward the front door. They stopped. And then, the footage skipped. Exactly 13 seconds disappeared. When the recording resumed, the boys were standing inside the house. David stared at the screen. There was no footage of them entering. No broken window. No forced door. Nothing. Just 2 children standing inside his home. Then the older boy slowly turned. He looked directly toward the security camera and smiled. The footage ended. David called the police. Officers searched the property. They found nothing. No footprints, no fingerprints, no sign that anyone had entered the house. But before one of the officers left, he asked David a strange question. "Did you let them inside?" David said no. The officer stared at him, then quietly said, "Good." David asked him why. The officer didn't answer. He simply walked back to his car. That night, David received a message from an unknown number. Only 6 words. "Why didn't you let us in?" David turned off his phone. He locked every door. He checked every window and tried to convince himself that it was over. It wasn't. 3 nights later, at almost exactly midnight, someone knocked on his door. 3 times. Slowly. David didn't move. He didn't speak. He barely breathed. Then, a whisper came from the other side. "We know you're awake." David looked toward the window. 2 small silhouettes stood outside, but this time, there were 3. One of them was holding something. A photograph. David's photograph. A photograph taken inside his house. David stepped away from the window, and for the first time, he understood something terrifying. The children weren't trying to get inside anymore. They had already found a way to get close. The story of the black-eyed children has circulated for decades. Some people believe the children are ghosts. Others believe they're something supernatural. Some claim they're creatures that need permission before entering a home. And skeptics believe the entire phenomenon is simply a modern urban legend, built from stories, fear, and imagination. But almost every version of the legend shares one disturbing detail. The children don't force their way inside. They ask, they wait, and they need you to invite them in. So imagine this. It's late at night. You're home alone. 3 knocks come from your front door. You look outside and see 2 children standing in the darkness. They look completely normal, until they ask, "Can we come inside?" Would you open the door? Because some legends are created to frighten us, but the most disturbing ones are the stories that leave you wondering, what if it happened to me? This is Midnight Files. Subscribe for more urban legends, paranormal encounters, unexplained phenomena, and mysteries that refuse to disappear. And remember, if you ever hear 3 knocks late at night, look through the window if you must, but don't open the door.